ages, but those are real. There are individuals in this community that didn't even know how to speak. Some who had never entered school. Children that are in your churches, in your communities, but yet face unspeakable trauma as a result of what's been done. Thank y'all for allowing me to be here. I can tell you that despite the names that we listed and the sadness that we feel from acknowledging what they have suffered, what I love is the banner beside me. It talks about restoring hope. And maybe that's what I can share a little bit with you today. This is not just a Cherokee County problem. Over 600,000 children in the United States are the victims of abuse and neglect. That's a child every minute facing physical, emotional, or sexual harm or being deprived of the basic needs of life. The trauma of abuse and neglect that leaves lasting scars affects the child's mental health, their relationships, and their sense of safety. But as sad as it is to read those names, y'all, we are not powerless. And it's why the commitment of this community to support a child advocacy center is so important. Imagine for a second, as Summer and I have seen as prosecutors, a young child, particularly a young girl, who's called in and asked to talk about the most embarrassing and intimate moments of their life, and to do it with total strangers, and at least in the past, to do it on multiple occasions. No one here is raising their hand to be asked to be able to do it and to volunteer. It's why CAC serves such a vital function, because instead of being shuffled between police, hospitals, and social services retelling their trauma multiple times, children come to a CAC where a coordinated team of professionals helps these unique children. They have teams that include law enforcement, social workers, therapists, medical experts, all focused on one goal, and that's supporting that child. At a CAC, a child is interviewed only once in a warm and comforting environment by a trained professional who knows how to listen with care. We know up front this reduces the trauma that child experiences and helps gather the information that law enforcement and prosecutors need to be able to pursue justice and hold their offender accountable. For y'all in this community, your CAC does far more than simply engage in interviews. They don't only respond to abuse, they help prevent it. Days like today, where we highlight the need in communities to make sure that we remember these victims by teaching parents and teachers and kids how to recognize and report abuse. They provide the resources to strengthen families, addressing risk factors like stress and isolation before abuse occurs. And y'all, we can stand proudly as a state because back in the early 80s, in a model that was developed in Huntsville, Alabama, we've now planted over 1,000 CACs across our country, making a difference in the lives of hundreds of thousands of children each year. Locally, you're making that difference here by providing vital services from counseling to kids to the training for adults to spot children in need. The thing that I'm most excited to share is what's the result? That when you make that financial and personal commitment as a community, what do you get in return? Children who receive that support through a CAC are far more likely to heal from their trauma and less likely to face victimization in the future. They feel heard, they feel believed, and they feel valued, often for the first time. Survivors who've gone through CACs also describe this as their turning point, a place where their voice mattered most. And CACs don't do this alone. They rely upon the support of individuals in this community, whether it be volunteers, donors, or advocates like you here today. You know, when I had a real job like Summer prosecuting criminals, I can tell you that I saw the direct result from the young children that I dealt with. And I want to tell you two stories. One is with a young lady, and I'll call her Amber. I met her when she was a junior in high school. The time that I met her, she had been sexually abused by her father on over 100 occasions. In fact, one of the initial battles that we faced in her recovery was convincing her that she could take a shower and do it safely, because every time she would do it at home, her father would draw back the shower curtain and watch her shower. And you can imagine the dread that she felt. She had some remarkable counselors that worked with her, a team that came together to give her strength. And while we removed the father from that environment and she had a safe place to go, it remained a struggle, even convincing her to go to school. Once we convicted her father and he went to jail for the rest of his life, I had lost touch with Amber until in my post office box I got an envelope, and it was an invitation to attend Amber's graduation. She invited two people. She invited me, and she invited her counselor on the child advocacy center. And I remember sitting in that hot gym in Marshall County, watching her proudly get her diploma, to be able to turn that tassel to the other side, and saw the smile on her face. And the counselor and I met with her afterwards, and I just said, Amber, why did you invite us here? And she said, I wanted you to know what I want to do. I'm going to go to college. I'm going to become a counselor. I'm going to work with little girls just like me and make sure they know they didn't do anything wrong. Another young lady I met for the first time when she was 11 years old, she had been the victim of sexual abuse from a step-grandfather. We were able to get her out of that home and get her into counseling at our child advocacy center. When I met her for the first time, she couldn't look me in the eye and clearly was not prepared to tell me what she had experienced. Over the next 18 months, she worked with some really good people that were specifically trained to deal with the issues that she faced. We had law enforcement that had received training at that CAC to know what they needed to look for, and they provided me the tools I needed as a prosecutor to help hold her offender accountable. But y'all, that young girl suffered abuse for years before she told, and the reason why was because that step-grandfather convinced her that if she came forward and talked about the abuse that she faced, that her grandmother, who she loved dearly, would abandon her and wouldn't let her come visit again. And she was right, because when her husband was arrested, she believed him and not that sweet girl. And that for years, as we were dealing with her preparation for coming to court, where she was dealing with not only the trauma that she had endured, but the loss of her love, her grandmother, that she desperately wanted. We went to a small courtroom, very similar to one here in Cherokee County, and we presented her facts. She had to get up in front of 12 total strangers that we call a jury and share that most intimate detail of what she'd experienced. That's why kids are my heroes when they do it. She was called a liar by the defendant when he got on the stand. He talked about his remarkable military career and how that little girl was trying to ruin his life. The good thing is the jury saw through it. They convicted him, and he likewise is spending a life in prison. And when we got done with that trial, the young girl and I walked back into a small room in the back of that courthouse, and we had a chance to talk. And that then, I think she was almost 13, she looked at me and she said, I want to thank you. I was like, you don't need to thank me. My job is to convict him. And she said, that's not what I'm talking about. She said, I want to thank you for believing. And she gave me a hug, and she walked out the door, and I cried, because I knew from that moment forward that she understood not only that people believed in her, but that we had restored her hope and her vision for what life she would have in the future. As we read through those names today, it is with immense sadness we know what they experienced. But it is my also belief that as a result of drawing attention to the problem that we face in communities here and across the country, just like those two girls, who as a result of the work that many did around them to give them hope and belief in their lives, that we can do it for these victims as well. Thank you for sharing their stories today, and thank you for letting me be a small part of today's program. May God bless you.